The 1% don't trade better. They see differently. Most people search for advantage in places that can be copied. Indicators, systems, data feeds. The elite search in silence, because what they look for can't be taught. We live in the age of information and the death of perception. More tools, more access, more precision, yet the same failure. Charts glow brighter, spreads tighten, algorithms whisper probabilities, and still, the crowd bleeds. You think you've evolved because the screens are faster. But the truth is, the screens evolved, not the mind. The 1% don't win because they predict. They win because they see what others can't bear to look at, their own fear reflected in every tick. They understand that every candle is a mirror. That profit is a test, not a prize. That silence, not knowledge, is the rarest edge left. So ask yourself, if the tools changed, why haven't the results? Maybe the 1% aren't doing something you can't do. Maybe they've simply stopped doing what everyone else does. They stopped being normal. You study price like scripture. You memorize patterns, ratios, and retracements. You quote Fibonacci as if it were faith. You believe the next candle confirms your intelligence. But the truth is, intelligence doesn't survive emotion. You can't outthink a heartbeat. You can't outcalculate fear. Because every time money moves, your identity moves with it. And that's what the market really trades. Identity, not capital. You want to be free, yet you chase rules. You crave mastery, yet you outsource it to gurus. You follow because following feels safe. You obey the crowd even when you call yourself independent. Because the crowd gives you comfort, and comfort feels like control. But the market doesn't reward comfort. It punishes attachment. It doesn't care about your conviction, your analysis, or your effort. It only responds to one thing, clarity. And clarity is impossible when you're trying to be someone. You can't trade and prove yourself at the same time. You can't watch price and protect your ego simultaneously. That's why most people lose. They trade to confirm identity, not to observe truth. The moment you take a trade to feel something, to prove, to recover, to matter, you've already lost. The market will mirror the emotion you refuse to admit. You think losses destroy confidence. They don't. They destroy illusion. They strip away the stories you hide behind. That's why it hurts. It's not the money that burns. It's the identity melting away. So you build systems to numb it. You over-optimize, over-analyze, overthink, because silence terrifies you. The absence of signals feels like death. And in that panic, you mistake more input for more control. You call yourself disciplined because you don't break rules. But you're not disciplined, you're afraid. Afraid to face the moment when there's no signal, no structure, no one to blame. Afraid to realize that trading was never about knowledge. It was about seeing who you are when nothing protects you. That's why 90% repeat the same patterns, because patterns feel like shelter. Losing hurts less when it's familiar. Mediocrity feels safe when it's shared, so the herd keeps moving in circles, each trader mistaking activity for awareness. They don't lose because they're stupid. They lose because they're normal. And normal is predictable. The market feeds on predictable. Every hesitation, every impulse, every rationalization, it's all visible. The chart is not reacting to you, it's revealing you. The market doesn't hunt traders. It hunts patterns of emotion. And most traders never change theirs. They chase the top, buy the dip, revenge the loss, reduce size when they should expand, protect profits when they should let them breathe. They do it because it feels right. And everything that feels right in trading is usually wrong. The crowd calls it experience. The 1% call it conditioning. They know that the mind repeats what it survives. You survived losses by reducing risk. You'll keep doing it. You survived fear by taking quick profits. You'll keep doing it. You survived uncertainty by seeking confirmation. You'll keep doing it. And you'll call it strategy, but it's not strategy. It's memory. And memory isn't awareness, it's inertia. You don't trade the market. You trade the ghosts of your past reactions. You see a red candle and feel every loss you ever had. You see a breakout and feel every missed chance. You're not in this moment, you're trapped in the replay. The 1% see the same chart but without ghosts. They don't interpret, they observe. They don't chase, they wait until the noise stops. They've accepted that control is an illusion, so they don't need to fight for it. That's why they can see what others can't. The difference between losing and mastery is simple. One reacts to emotion, the other recognizes it. Both feel it, but only one sees through it. So ask yourself, what would trading look like if you stopped needing to be right? If you stopped trying to protect the image of a good trader? Would you still fear the same moves? Would you still hesitate at the same levels? You don't need more data. You need to become aware of the data inside you, the unconscious signals, the micro-tensions, the patterns of breath that dictate your entries, because the market isn't personal, but your perception is. And until you see that clearly, every improvement is just a louder version of the same mistake. You're not losing to randomness. You're losing to repetition. Your system isn't broken, your perspective is. And when that truth finally lands, it hurts. It should. That pain is the beginning of awareness. Every trader believes he's fighting the market. But the market was never the opponent. It was only the reflection. What you call volatility is your nervous system screaming for safety. What you call opportunity is your ego begging to matter. And what you call analysis is often just an attempt to make chaos feel logical. The market doesn't create your fear, it reveals it. It doesn't punish you, it exposes you. Every loss, every spike, every hesitation is a mirror you keep trying to look away from. You think fear is a weakness, but fear is data. It tells you where the illusion of control begins and ends. The 1% read fear like price action. They measure it, not obey it. You've built habits around avoiding pain. You let losses run because hope feels easier than acceptance. You cut winners early because comfort feels safer than clarity. You size down after profit because pleasure feels fragile. You size up after loss because pain feels unbearable. You call these choices logical, but they're not logic, they're anesthesia. The brain wasn't built for awareness. It was built for survival. It doesn't care if you're profitable. It only cares if you avoid pain. That's why every reaction makes perfect biological sense and terrible financial sense. You're not irrational. You're human. And being human in a system that punishes emotion is the hardest game ever designed. The 1% are not superhuman. They've simply reprogrammed the instinct to escape discomfort. They've taught their nervous system to breathe where others flinch. They see pain not as something to avoid but as a signal to expand. To the 1%, a losing trade is feedback. To the 99%, it's identity collapse. And identity is the real position size. You risk it every time you enter the market. So long as your self-worth fluctuates with your P&L, you will trade from desperation. You will exit too early to protect your image. You will hold too long to protect your hope. You will keep changing strategies because you can't stand still long enough to face silence. You confuse volatility with movement. But volatility is only emotion measured in price. And emotion unobserved always loops. That's why every trading journal looks the same. I cut early. I hesitated. I broke my rule. The sentences change, but the pattern remains. Fear wearing different disguises. You don't need to fix the pattern. You need to see it. Because the moment you see it without judgment, it begins to dissolve. That's what awareness does. It breaks repetition. But awareness requires stillness. And stillness feels unbearable when you've been addicted to motion. So you keep moving, scrolling, analyzing, tweaking, mistaking activity for presence, mistaking complexity for mastery. Every trader wants calm markets, but the 1% want calm minds, because the market is never calm. It only mirrors your state of being. Look at a red candle. Does your body tighten? That's not strategy, that's memory. You're not reacting to this candle. You're reacting to every candle that ever hurt you. Look at a green one. Does your chest rise, your breath quicken? That's not opportunity, it's hope disguised as logic. You say you're a technical trader, but you're not trading setups. You're trading your emotional architecture. Every tick is your psychology quantified. You built this mind to protect you from life. Now it protects you from growth. Every time you avoid pain, you confirm the pattern that keeps you ordinary. The 1% broke that loop. They learned that discomfort is not danger, it's data. They face what others avoid. They add when others reduce. They sit still when others panic. They detach when others identify. They've made peace with pain. And in that peace they found perception. Because pain is just resistance to truth. And truth, once felt fully, stops hurting. You want the calm of mastery without the surrender it requires. You want certainty without silence. You want control without awareness. And so you keep running, not realizing that the thing you're running from lives inside you. The 1% stopped running. They sat in the fire until it stopped burning. And when the noise went quiet, they began to see not the market, but themselves. That's the moment awareness begins, when you realize the market never punished you. It only followed the orders of your mind. If you could see the connection between your thought and the next candle, you'd never curse volatility again. You'd see it as feedback, not betrayal. you'd understand that the market is teaching you how to see without fear. Every fluctuation becomes a lesson in neutrality, every loss an initiation, every gain a test of attachment. The market speaks a single language, reaction, and until you become fluent in your own, you'll never translate its silence. Most traders keep chasing patterns. The 1% realize they were the pattern, and once you see that, truly see it, the game changes, because now every mistake becomes a mirror, and every mirror becomes a doorway. What you see there might terrify you at first, but eventually it will free you, because the only thing standing between you and the 1% is the version of you still afraid to feel. Normal doesn't make money. Normal obeys emotion and calls it instinct. Normal confuses comfort for competence. Normal is the reflex to seek relief, not truth. Every trader wants to be different, yet behaves the same. They follow rules they don't understand, quote wisdom they don't live, copy systems they don't feel. They say they want freedom, but what they really want is protection from freedom's weight. The 1% are not fearless, they are fluent in fear. They stop trying to control it. They learn to trade through it, inside it, with it. Because fear doesn't disappear, it transforms. You can't evolve while staying comfortable. You can't awaken while trying to stay the same. Every new level of awareness demands the death of an old identity. That's why evolution feels like loss. You cling to what feels familiar, but familiarity is the coffin of growth. You can't become the 1% by thinking like the crowd. You can't see clearly if you keep trying to be safe. The 1% don't survive because they predict. They survive because they adapt. They let go faster. They lose quicker. They recover in silence. They expand inside discomfort until discomfort becomes their baseline. It's not talent. It's courage. The courage to be uncomfortable longer than others can stand. Normal traders talk about risk. The 1% live inside it. They've learned that the only way to understand chaos is to stop resisting it. When you lose and react, you repeat. When you lose and observe, you evolve. Reaction is survival. Observation is transformation. Normal traders add to losing trades because they want to feel right. The 1% add to winning trades because they want to feel truth. Normal cuts winners to protect comfort. The 1% holds discomfort to protect clarity. Every instinct your body sends you in the market is late. It's a survival echo from a time when danger had teeth and blood. But markets have no predators, only mirrors. Your fear isn't warning you of danger. It's warning you of awareness. You'll feel that fear every time a position moves against you. That's not the market attacking you. That's your identity begging not to die. The 1% let that death happen. They let the ego burn, the comfort crack, the pattern collapse. Because what's left afterward is something rarer than knowledge, clarity. Clarity has no emotion. It doesn't celebrate profit or mourn loss. It just observes. That's why the 1% seem detached. They're not cold, they're conscious. They know that the mind that panics in drawdown is the same mind that chases euphoria in gain. Both are noise. Both distort perception. And perception is the only real edge. When you finally accept that control is an illusion, you begin to trade reality instead of fantasy. You begin to see that price doesn't move to hurt you. It moves to show you where you still resist. Every time you fight the market, you fight yourself. And every time you surrender to it, you see a little more truth. Surrender isn't giving up. It's giving in to awareness. It's the moment the market stops being an enemy and starts being a mirror. It's when every loss becomes a message instead of a wound. But the ego doesn't die quietly. It resists in the form of doubt, hesitation, pride. It will whisper that surrender means weakness. That patience means passivity. That detachment means indifference. It will try to keep you inside the comfort of chaos. The 1% ignore that voice. They've seen what happens when they obey it. Small wins, big losses, endless noise. They've realized that mastery begins where emotion ends. They don't seek less fear. They seek greater awareness of it. They let fear breathe and burn until it loses power. They let pain exist until it becomes information. You can measure a trader's growth by how much truth they can hold without flinching. The 1% hold a lot. They don't need to be right. They need to be real. And being real means accepting that you will never control the market. You will only ever understand yourself through it. So the next time you stare at a chart, stop asking, where will price go? Ask instead, where am I still blind because blindness costs more than any losing trade? Every moment of hesitation is a clue. Every pulse of panic is a signal. Every rush of greed is a reflection. And if you trace those reactions back to their source, you'll find not strategy but self. That's where the real shift begins, not in a new system, but in a new perception of the old one. The 1% don't trade differently because they found a secret. They trade differently because they stopped lying. They faced what the rest deny, the raw, unfiltered human behind every decision. They realize that awareness doesn't protect you from pain. It refines it. It turns pain into precision. And when you reach that point, everything changes. Losses stop being threats. Wins stop being validation. The market becomes neutral again, alive, breathing, pure. That's when trading stops being survival and becomes meditation. When charts become mirrors, when noise becomes rhythm, when fear becomes focus, you stop fighting volatility because you see yourself inside it. You stop searching for certainty because you feel steady within uncertainty. And that steadiness, that internal equilibrium, is what normal traders will call luck. But it isn't luck. It's the result of dying correctly to illusion, dying to ego, dying to the need for safety. The 1% are not special. They're simply awake. And awakening always looks insane to the asleep. You will know you're close when everything inside you screams to quit, to take profit, to protect, to retreat. And you stay anyway. Not because you're reckless, but because you're finally ready to see. That is the moment the noise collapses. The mind stops chasing and starts listening. And what remains is not confidence, not courage, not certainty, but consciousness. Clarity feels like silence. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't congratulate you. It just removes everything that isn't real. The 1% live in that silence. They trade inside it. They don't need to prove. They don't need to predict. They've stopped trying to know and started learning to see. When they look at a chart, they're not searching for opportunity. They're listening for noise. They wait for the mind to stop trembling. They know that clarity can't coexist with tension. And tension is what normal traders call excitement. You're told to wait for confirmation. But what if confirmation is the lie? What if the act of needing proof blinds you to perception? The 1% don't confirm, they align. They don't react, they respond. And that difference is invisible until you've suffered enough to feel it. To the 1%, the market is not a puzzle to solve, but a rhythm to synchronize with. They trade as if breathing. Each inhale a pause, each exhale a decision. They're not faster, they're calmer. And calm makes speed irrelevant. Most traders talk about mindset as if it's a checklist, but awareness isn't a mindset, it's an absence of noise. It's the point where discipline becomes instinct, and instinct becomes silence. You keep searching for flow, but flow only appears when resistance dissolves. You can't enter it by force. You enter it by surrender. The 1% understand that their mind is the market, that every spike, every retracement, every pause is an inner echo. So they manage their state before they manage their risk. Because once the state is calm, risk is just math. That's the difference between trading and reacting. One happens in stillness. The other happens in fear. They don't need to eliminate emotion. They need to see through it. Fear is not the problem. Attachment to comfort is. Greed is not the enemy. Blindness to it is. When awareness expands, fear shrinks to its true size, just another candle. No different from any other moment. No special meaning. No story. The 1% live in that neutrality. They know that the market's movement is never personal. It's collective emotion expressed through numbers. And once you see that, you stop trying to win. You start trying to witness. Every trade becomes an act of observation, a dialogue between awareness and uncertainty. You don't take trades to profit. You take them to test your perception. Profit is the side effect of presence. They understand that control ends where clarity begins. That knowledge without awareness is just decoration. That silence reveals what analysis hides. To think like the 1% is to reverse everything you've been told. Success isn't in mastering the market. It's in mastering the mind that sees it. Discipline isn't restriction. It's relaxation under pressure. Confidence isn't certainty. It's neutrality toward outcome. The 1% don't trade for excitement. They trade for stillness. They don't crave adrenaline, they crave emptiness. Because in emptiness, everything is visible. They stopped worshipping prediction and started practicing observation. They know that every moment you try to force a result, you distort reality. And distortion is the real cost of ego. You want to see like them? Then stop asking what they use. Start asking what they've let go of. They've let go of needing to be right, of needing to look smart, of needing to feel safe, of needing to make sense of every move. They've let go of the noise that makes the average trader deaf to truth, because the truth isn't hidden, it's ignored. ignored by the mind that wants complexity, ignored by the ego that wants identity, ignored by the crowd that wants comfort. The 1% have made peace with uncertainty. They no longer call it chaos, they call it life. They know the market doesn't punish mistakes, it punishes hesitation. They don't fear drawdowns, they fear disconnection from awareness. They don't chase perfection, they chase presence. Their charts are clean, their minds are clearer, their decisions are slower, and their silence is louder than the crowd's analysis. They've learned that mastery isn't about control, it's about capacity. The capacity to remain still while everything moves. That's the real edge, not strategy, not setup. Stillness. Stillness is not stagnation. It's precision without pressure. It's patience without paralysis. It's action without anxiety. And when you learn to exist in that space, the market begins to reveal itself. You stop seeing candles, you start seeing consciousness. You stop seeing risk, you start seeing rhythm. You stop seeing loss, you start seeing feedback. That's what they see that you don't. Not information, not secrets, just reality, undistorted, unfiltered, undeniable. And once you see it, you can never go back. Because awareness can't be unlearned. It can only deepen. You stop searching for the 1%. You start becoming them. Awareness isn't a breakthrough. It's a practice. It begins in silence and ends in repetition. The 1% don't wait for enlightenment. They train for it. One trade at a time, one reaction at a time. Awareness becomes a ritual, not a revelation. They treat every trade as meditation. They breathe before entries. They observe emotions without naming them. They take notes, not of price, but of patterns in their own behavior. The crowd journals numbers. The 1% journal consciousness. They know the mind that wins today will try to sabotage tomorrow. So they watch it. Every hesitation, every impulse, every justification, recorded like data. They don't judge it. They measure it. This is how consistency is built. Not through control, but through observation. Consistency isn't a routine. It's awareness repeated. You can't sustain what you don't understand. You can't improve what you won't look at. The 1% watch the mind until the mind stops watching itself. That's when trading becomes flow. Not the romantic kind, but the quiet kind. An empty mind moving in perfect sync with uncertainty. They understand that flow doesn't mean ease. It means alignment. It's the state where every thought, every reaction, every impulse passes through awareness before it becomes action. They no longer separate trading from living. Markets are just mirrors of consciousness. Every decision on the chart echoes a decision in life. How you handle drawdown is how you handle disappointment. How you manage profits is how you manage success. How you wait is how you live. The 1% are not better traders. They are more honest observers. They confront their bias daily. They lose often but rarely the same way twice, because every loss becomes feedback, and feedback becomes wisdom. Awareness replaces confidence. Observation replaces hope. Presence replaces strategy. And the paradox is that when you stop trying to win, you start performing better, because you've removed the friction between perception and reality. You've stopped reacting, you're responding. Their calm isn't genetic. It's trained. Every morning they reset the mind. Every night they reflect on patterns that returned. They build mental endurance the way others build systems, slowly, deliberately, endlessly. They know the mind decays toward chaos unless it's cleaned daily. And journaling is that cleaning, awareness written into permanence. The 1% don't call it mindset work. They call it maintenance. They know the market doesn't care how inspired they feel. It only mirrors their internal temperature. They study that temperature with precision. They track when fear rises, when boredom strikes, when greed whispers. They know awareness is their only edge that doesn't expire. So they nurture it like oxygen. They meditate not to escape thought, but to recognize it sooner. They visualize not outcomes, but neutrality. They rehearse losing gracefully. They rehearse winning without attachment. And over time, the repetition rewires their biology. Their nervous system stops reacting to volatility. Their breath stabilizes. Their pulse becomes rhythm. Their perception expands. They stop asking, what will the market do? They start asking, what am I doing to distort it? Because distortion always begins within. If the mind is noisy, the chart will be too. If the mind is desperate, opportunity will look like threat. If the mind is still, everything becomes signal. This is the quiet secret of the 1%. They are not masters of prediction. They are custodians of perception. They don't manage trades, they manage consciousness. They don't measure results, they measure awareness. Their results are simply reflections of that maintenance. You can feel it when you watch them. No rush, no panic, no euphoria, just presence moving through volatility. Like wind through grass, they understand that every trade is the same trade. Fear versus awareness, attachment versus surrender, noise versus silence. They've stopped needing to win that war. They simply witness it. And witnessing is victory, because when awareness becomes habit, mastery becomes normal. You don't have to remind yourself to stay calm, you just are. You don't have to force discipline, it becomes breathing. That's why they call it the inner market. It never closes, it never trends, it never crashes. It only reflects. The more you observe it, the clearer it becomes. And when it's clear enough, the outer market starts to follow. That's when you understand performance was never about control. It was about consciousness, and consciousness was never about trading. It was about living with eyes open. You can't separate the two anymore. Trading becomes life. Life becomes awareness. And every candle is just a reminder to return to stillness. That's how the 1% live. Not chasing, not forcing, not waiting, just perceiving. Their wealth is awareness multiplied by time. Their profit is peace under pressure. And when they close their platforms at night, they don't feel pride or regret. They feel presence, because no trade is ever truly lost when it leaves you more conscious than before. The chart is still moving, but you are not. The noise has slowed. The mind that needed answers now sits in silence. You watch the candles breathe and realize they were never random. They were you, rising, falling, hesitating, breaking. The market wasn't chaos. It was communication. You mistook reflection for opposition. You called truth volatility. But it was only awareness trying to reach you through uncertainty. Now the silence feels different. Not empty, complete. You no longer chase patterns, you listen to rhythm. You no longer demand results, you let them unfold. The 1% live here in this stillness. They don't need to predict tomorrow because they're awake today. They don't call it edge, they call it clarity. The market will rise and fall forever. It will take from you and give back what's left of truth. Each loss will still sting, but not wound. Each win will still thrill, but not define. You begin to understand that profit was never the lesson. Awareness was. That you were never trading price, only perception, and the only real gain is the mind that no longer needs to win. So you close the screen. The world outside hasn't changed, but you have. The same chart, the same data, the same uncertainty, yet none of it feels threatening anymore. Because once you see differently, you trade differently. And once you trade differently, you live differently. You'll still lose sometimes. You'll still feel fear. But awareness will arrive faster. It will whisper before the chaos begins. It will remind you to breathe before the impulse strikes. That's the real return. The ability to remain clear when everything shakes. That's what the 1% see that you don't. Not opportunity, not certainty, just truth, quiet, merciless, freeing. The chart fades to white. The movement slows. You exhale. The market doesn't need you to conquer it. It only needs you to wake up inside it. And as the last candle dissolves into silence, one truth remains. Real wealth isn't profit. It's the absence of panic.